Hi, everybody. I'm Pete Wright with LexJet, and I'm here today with a really great friend and an amazing artist, Cheri Hammon. Cheri, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great.
So, I want to talk to you about a lot of things. You're kind of a unique talent because there's not a lot of people I talk to that do printing, that the printing is just kind of the beginning of the work that they do. We're going to get into a little bit of that, but I always love to kind of get into the mind of people that are like, yeah, the printing's not the end. It keeps going.
Just the beginning.
I want to talk a little bit about your photography first, and then we'll kind of morph over to your printing journey. Talk to me about the type of work you do, how long you've been photographing, kind of what types of work you started at, and how you transitioned to where you are now.
Started in the mid-'80s. I was the retouch artist for a studio in Augusta, Georgia, Fitzsims. They're no longer around, sadly. And then as digital came along, did the retouching digitally, and then Corel Painter came along, and then did the painting. The photography that I do now is a lot of landscapes, florals, abstracts, those kind of things.
So you've always kind of been in that fine art world because of the
Yes.
retouching and the painting and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But now your photography is very much that way as well.
Yes.
When did you start printing your work?
Oh, and I worked for a photographic store in Atlanta, and they bought an iris printer to do fine art reproductions for artists, and that was my first experience with inkjet printing, and that was a very difficult printer. It has a really bad reputation of being finicky, and it was. Then worked on Epsons to do some printing for them as well. Then I started my own business with the painting for photographers, and wasn't really happy with some of the results that I was getting having someone else print it, and I knew it could be better. So that was my very first printer was an Epson wide format.
Okay. And you eventually, I guess, you printed with the Epson for a while, and now you're with Canon.
Canon.
You've got the Pro 4100. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Fantastic. So great machines. Both the Epson, I think you said 9600 you had?
Yes,
And
9600.
then now the Pro 4100. So you've had two great machines.
I had another Canon in between, the 8300.
Oh, okay. So the IPF 8300. So
I printed on it until I killed it.
well, listen, I mean, use it until it dies, right?
It did.
So for the person out there that's not been printing their own stuff, they've been sending everything outsourced to a lab, and they look at the machines, they're like, I see the stuff that comes off of them, and it looks really great. It's a big printer, and it looks really intimidating. I don't want to get involved in it. First of all, it looks expensive. It looks like it's going to cost me an arm and a leg to print. I think the lab can do it cheaper. But secondly, I don't know that I could do that. That looks really complicated. What do you say to that person?
It's really not complicated. There are plenty of resources online and people that you can call, like LexJet, if you have any questions about it. And with instructions that are available, it's not difficult at all. And I'm not a tech person, and if I can learn it, anybody can learn it.
And you said that you've been through several series. You were with an Epson for a while, then you went to an IPF 8300 from Canon, then you moved to the Canon Pro 4100. So you've had to transition, and I know from our talking that you liked it, like you said, you like to print until it dies. You're going to use that machine just like a car or anything else. Why should I change? It still works. If you get to the point where it's like, well, there's new technology and it's time to switch, I know a lot of people, they're like, it's not that they're afraid of using the machine, but just the learning curve of, okay, I've got to go from this device to this device. How much new stuff am I going to learn? So you went from the IPF 8300 to the Pro 4100. Was there a big learning curve in transitioning from one to the other that maybe you were like, oh, that was harder than, or was it pretty simple for you?
It was pretty simple. There wasn't a whole lot of difference in how I printed. Again, there's so many resources that people can find on any of the changes or any of the control panel features. It was pretty much seamless, and I'm a person who hates change, so it wasn't a big deal.
Okay. So talk to me a little bit about your printing, and I don't want to get into your embellishment yet because that's a whole nother thing. I want to talk a little bit about the different medias you use and kind of why you choose them. I know there's 3 specific medias of ours that you use as your primary medias. Kind of cover each one and which ones you use for what and why you specifically use those.
The fine art photography usually is going to be the Fiber Elite, and it's beautiful, kind of an eggshell soft finish that we like a lot for our fine art work. The canvas, I will do some fine art stuff, like big florals and things like that, just for a little bit of a different look.
And your canvas is the opal elements?
The black opal.
Black opal.
Yes. And the cold press cotton rag. I do a lot of old photo restorations, and a lot of times those clients will like the matte paper because it's a lot like the old papers that I'm restoring. So I'll use that paper for that as well.
Awesome. I definitely want to come back to the restoration stuff and the fine art restoration work that you do. I want to jump into the embellishment that you do because obviously you started out doing a lot of the retouching and the hand touching, rebrushing and stuff like that. Talk to me about how that's kind of moved through and the things that you've done in terms of where that progression has been, because I know probably what you're doing now is very different than how you started out with that, correct?
Oh, definitely. In the days of negative retouching and print retouching, the physical artwork before computers, the restorations, it was a kind of a long drawn-out process where the original piece was photographed. We got a negative. I retouched that negative. Then that negative was used to print a work print, and then I did physical artwork on that print, dyes, pencils, airbrush, and then that was copied for another negative, and then a final print made from that. And then we printed on, it was usually Kodak Ectolurgy that we printed the restorations on. And how that's changed is all the artwork is done in one place digitally, and then printed out, and then embellished if that client wants that. The paintings that I do for other photographers, I'll print on canvas. I coat it for a nice smooth finish. Then level 1, I offer 2 levels. Level 1 is clear acrylic brushed on, different size brushes, and I'm usually keeping in the same form and brushwork that I used in the digital painting to put onto the canvas. And then level 2, if they commission it, is oil painting accents on top of that. So there's a couple of layers.
The highlights and things like that you're adding
highlights, hair accents, if it's environmental, like trees and flowers and stuff like that. Highlights in clothes, some accent colors here and there.
So when you're going through and you're doing all of the different embellishing that you're putting in this, are you doing all of that? You mentioned digitally first. Are you using Corel or are you using
Corel.
Photoshop? And would you say you're spending probably about the same amount of time in Corel as you are afterwards with the embellishing, or a lot of time with the Corel and then coming back and spending a little less time with the embellishing?
It's about even.
Mm-hmm. I mean, because I would imagine once you get to the part where you're actually embellishing the physical print, at that point it's like, okay, even though the work has been done digitally, you still need to follow those same lines. You still need to kind of make sure everything's matching up. And at that point, you just don't want to screw it up.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and the beautiful thing about that is when we talk about embellishment, when it's all said and done, it's kind of a one-off at this point. It's no longer something that you can just push print. I mean, obviously you can print the digital painted version, but it's that embellishing, whether it's the level 1 or the level 2 that you're talking about.
Exactly.
That it makes it completely unique. Now it's a family heirloom that it has a different value to it, a different perception to something that you're going to pass on to generations because of the work that's been done on that.
Yes.
And I think what was lost with photography for a lot of people, I mean, 1600s, 1500s, 1600s, 1700s, a family portrait was a painting that you sat for paintings. And it became, very simplified with photography, which was great. But also what happened was photos didn't get passed down as far through generations as paintings did. I mean, you can go to museums to this day and still see paintings that were done hundreds and hundreds of years ago.
People placed a higher value on them.
Exactly. So you're kind of bringing that back. I mean, you're taking both mediums and putting them together. You're taking the photography, you're taking family portraits, or you're taking art pieces, and then transitioning it to a piece of art with Corel, and then going through and taking all those years and years of experience you've taken into getting the brushstroke and getting the right colors and everything and doing it. Now, I got to think, it's got to be pretty therapeutic when you're doing this, right?
Oh, I love it. I'm in my own world. I've got music going. And Dennis knows that when I'm in that zone to just leave me alone and let me do my thing.
Is this something that if the average person said, you know what, I love what she's doing, I want to buy a printer and I want to take my photography to the next level by doing this, how complicated is it for somebody to pick it up and learn and start practicing and get those strokes? Is this something that a photographer could maybe use to take their work to the next level?
If they're artistically inclined, they're probably going to have a leg up and a better, a faster learning experience than someone who's not. There's a lot of learning involved in technique and brushstroke and color theory and color mixing and stuff like that. Anybody can learn to do anything, I think. But if you're artistically inclined, it's going to be easier, I think.
And the first step of it's obviously you got to print. I mean, everybody that I've ever worked with on printing that didn't print and they needed my help with learning how to print, how to get their work from the camera to the print. Everyone I ever spoke to said, when I started printing my work myself, I started seeing the flaws I was making as a photographer, and it changed the way I photographed because most of them were taking images, sending it to a lab, and then the lab was doing a lot of corrections that they didn't even know were happening until they had to do it themselves. And then they saw, oh, wow, that image that I've been sending to the lab wasn't good. They were doing a lot of work to make it look that good. So then they had to change their settings, the way they looked at things, their composition, because when they're printing it, they're seeing, okay, I need to do this. So I got to think that then the next level, if I got better as an artist or as a photographer by printing my work, then if I start doing, let me just try, start small. Let me do just minor embellishments. Even if it's just for me, is that going to make me a better photographer? Am I going to even change the way I'm photographing? I mean, it's kind of a full circle thing. Everything you do that takes you to the next level makes you better at the base, right?
Right. And I found that for me, starting in this career as a retouch artist from the very beginning, I was trained to pick out flaws and things that were wrong to fix. And I've learned a lot about photography, retouching other photographers' work, and then also communicating with them things that they could do to make it better. It's kind of the same lines as printing your own work and realizing maybe I should change my lightings, fix the shadows, blowing out the highlights, that kind of thing. They kind of go hand in hand.
And then when you get into Corel and you're doing these beautiful art pieces, it's got to be nice too. Like if you're at this beautiful scene and you're photographing, you're like, man, I wish this rock was there. Or I wish that tree wasn't there. Well, when I get to the computer, it doesn't have to be there anymore.
Exactly.
So you can have an image. You can look at a scene and say, it looks really great, but I'd really love it to have this. And you can go home in your mind. You can be photographing it exactly the way you see it in your head, knowing that you're going to change things. And that's another part of the process of just knowing what you're capable of and where you can take that image to the next level just by knowing what you can do from learning Corel and then learning the painting and things like that. So that I would love to spend a few days in your mind, like, what is she thinking? How is this stuff processing?
That could be a scary place.
So what's kind of next for you? Do you have ideas on things that you want to do? You have personal projects, things that you like? I know there's so many new medias that are always coming out, and there's so many things out there that we're always looking at the technology saying, okay, I want to try this or I want to try that. Are there things out there that are kind of exciting you right now?
I think Dennis and I, we give ourselves personal projects. We don't have a whole lot of time for our own personal artwork, being so busy with portraits and the paintings for other photographers, that we find that we have to schedule time, just like a client, to work on personal projects and doing personal series, whether it's an abstract series or black and white series of like florals or something like that, or just personal paintings of mine that I love doing. As far as trying something new, haven't really wanted to try something new quite yet. Still dabbling in what I'm doing now.
Well, we're definitely going to have to show you some of the new papers and new things that are coming out and see if we can intrigue you to, I need to try that.
Can't wait to see them. They were telling me about one in the booth, so I'm looking forward to it.
Perfect. We definitely need to introduce you to maybe Maldives and maybe some of the Hanamule products that are out there. There's some really great stuff out there that I'd love for you to see. We did touch briefly on your fine art reproduction stuff. Tell me a little bit more about that, because that's something that I think is a growing art that maybe people are like, okay, I need to know more. So tell me a little bit about the fine art reproduction.
Well, Dennis and I will work together on that. He will copy them. And then if there's anything that needs to be done as far as artwork, then I will take it into Photoshop and then sometimes Painter, depending on how much work needs to be done. And working with the client to find out if they want anything changed. Usually with restoration clients, they want to keep it the same, but sometimes they want to replace a background or something like that. Done a few of those where it was a horrible background and then ended up changing it to something that was more appropriate for the image. And then it's proofing back and forth with the client to make sure we're going in the direction that they want to go. And then I will print 10 or 11 inch proof for them to approve on the substrate that they're going to have it printed on, and then just get it approved and then print the final.
And I love that you have specific media that you think really works for that. It's always kind of nice when you have certain papers that you kind of envision for certain things, and the fact that you've already picked out a paper that works really well for you on those types of fine art reproduction is really fantastic.
And then sometimes if they want a painting, then I'll do it on the canvas and then embellish and stretch it. So it's not always on that cotton rag. Sometimes it is on the canvas.
So it kind of depends on what the output needs to be. So
Yes.
If anybody that's watching wants to get a little bit more, if they want to see some of your work, first of all, where do they go?
My website is for my photographer clients that commission paintings. It's artbycheri.net. And then Facebook is Cheri Fitzgerald Hammon. And Instagram is @Cheri Hammon.
Perfect.
And the painting work is on the Facebook and Instagram, and my personal fine art is also on Facebook and Instagram.
And I know on Facebook I see all the time the different workshops that you and Dennis are doing. You guys travel all over the world, so we're looking forward to maybe joining you in some of these overseas in Ireland, and definitely looking forward to eventually going to the snow coach in January in below 40 degrees, minus 40 degrees. Oh my goodness, that's insane. Cheri, thank you so much. I really appreciate your time today, and
Thank you.
Look forward to spending more time with you and Dennis in the near future.
Us too.
Take care.
Thank you.